over the weekend, I was trying to, go back and chart out all the economic crashes since the 1830s because a little idea popped in my head. Hey, wait a minute. We had to have fixed all those problems because that was the Fed's all about, right? Let me just say this. My wife is a very, very, very lucky woman. Sure, she could have a spouse that takes her out to movies or, gets friends and families and hang out and, watch football or whatever. But I've saved her from a life of all those kinds of trivial things. And she so appreciates it. She does. She was right there by my side the whole weekend as I was charting out past economic collapses. And she was like, this is fun. This is really fun. Anyway, I couldn't remember all the way back, all the time, the crashes in the time machine. I got back to, I thought it was around 1830-ish. And I made a note in my book about, how long did these crashes last and compare them to the 20th century crashes. Then, lo and behold, after I did all that work, last night I go to zerohedge.com and somebody has done all the work for me, which kind of pissed me off, but not as much as it did my wife, okay? This is a stunning chart. A stunning chart that shows all the various forms of economic crisis in recent history. By the way, the Fed was created, you're going to have to move up. Can you move up? The Fed was created right here. This is where the Fed was created. Oh, look, things look a little worse, don't they? But keep going, because it just, the Fed's not doing a good job. It has helped make the globe more economically stable or unstable. I'm not sure which one means which. Looks to me like it's gotten much worse. Yet the reaction every single time choppy waters or tough times are ahead, expand the role of the Fed or expand the role of the government and spend. It's like we're trying to cure cancer and death with cancer and death. Doesn't really work, And by the way, can't really cure death because people die. You can't really cure the ups and downs of the market because the market is going to have ups and downs no matter what. And people are trying constantly to put bandages on giant gaping wounds and refusing to go into surgery, and it only prolongs the inevitable and only makes these things go up higher and this go down lower and drag it out. Bill Kristol, call me. Or you should call Bill Kristol because he'll set your friends straight. America has been handling economic crisis the wrong way for a long time, and now the whole world is doing it. Instead of understanding capitalism, we got a new thing that's happening this weekend. Politicians have been trying to tamper with it for a while. We've been telling you that. They're trying to destroy capitalism. No, they're not. Everybody loves capitalism. Everybody loves freedom. Now they're trying to fundamentally transform America out of capitalism and into something else. What proof? Political elites and economists from around the globe are meeting at Davos this week. Yes. Soros types are in attendance, and sometimes Spooky Dude himself even goes. This year, they are, quote, urgently trying to find ways to reform the outdated and crumbling system of capitalism. Ooh. Can I ask you? Come here on one. If they're trying to remodel capitalism because it's outdated and crumbling, and they're coming up with a new system, don't you think you and I should be involved in that? I mean, it's kind of our system too. No, we should just let the elites do it. They know better than we do. Yeah. Because I want to be a smurf or a serf. Whichever one, blue or just somebody who slaves for the Lord in the castle, whichever. I'm cool with it. We don't need to be involved. The host and founder of the World Economic Forum said, quote, solving problems in context of outdated and crumbling models will only dig us deeper into the hole. Quote, we're in an era of profound change that urgently requires new ways of thinking instead of more business as usual. Capitalism, in its current form, has no place in the world around us. Oh, hang on. That's making That's making me want to grab my cane just a little bit. I need to stabilize myself. Capitalism in its current form has no place in the world around us? That's kind of new news, isn't it? Mr. Finger in my nose guy, let me ask you this. What is your new idea? Why do you say you pass it by the people? Is it socialism? Is it communism? No. No, because those aren't new, and there's piles and piles and piles of dead bodies to prove it. Nope, nope. Is it an open society? Is that it? Because if that's an open society, there won't be any piles of dead bodies after that one, because this time that magic will work. Yeah. When they had similar forums at Bretton Woods about 2 years ago, remember we went on and on and on about it, nobody paid any attention. Yeah, their plan for destroying capitalism was laid out. It was there where George Soros claimed it was time for, quote, a grand bargain that rearranges the entire financial order. Man, I didn't get the memo or the invite for that. And he hoped the conferences would lead to, quote, an establishment of new international rules and the reform of the currency system. You know, the stuff you've been saving your whole life and putting in the bank? Yeah, he just wants to change it a little bit. He'll let you know. You'll get the memo later. Okay. Now, before you mock Bretton Woods, it was at Bretton Woods in 1944 that at that event it led to the establishment of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which are now pretty much controlling all of the money. Soros seeks a new multilateral system, more frankly, where America is not really the cream of the crop anymore. Remember, Soros, in his own words, said, quote, the main obstacle to a stable and just world is the United States. Oh, Soros, Soros, Soros. Don't you love this guy? He's personally dumped hundreds of millions of dollars into organizing world powers together. And, you know, that's just him. There are other globalists and progressives and Fabian socialists who agree with him. And they've also dumped considerable resources into this. Now, all of this is verifiable, but your friends will say it's a conspiracy theory. Oh, well, time for new friends. No one seems to pay any attention to this, despite the obvious advancements and the pictures and audio tape of them planning it all out. So when will somebody figure all this out? My guess. People will start to figure it out, I'm thinking, about 15 minutes before I punch a family member in the face for asking this question, you know, when we're plowing the fields in our re-education camps. And they'll suddenly look up and say, when did all of this happen? Right as I clock back to say, oh, it happened right about the time we elected Newt Gingrich for president. Now shut up and mush. That's when people will figure it out. By the way, here's the chart again. I just want to show you this. It shows all the economic ups and downs from 1910 on, okay? Let me show you it over here on the chalkboard because we've compressed it a little bit. Here's 1810. And by the way, this section is the GDP this is all in. The percentage of the world GDP that is in crisis. Could be sovereign default, banking, currency, inflation, but this is all of it. Okay? In 1857, only about 57% of the world GDP was in crisis. Panic of 1873 is here. In 1893, 46% of all of the money, everything we had, was in crisis in the world. And here was a big silver crash. Now, here's the last of the good old days, right about here. Okay, and then 1910, we had a liquidity run and the stock market collapsed. This right here collapsed here. We had a liquidity run and collapsed. And then this one right here, 1914. Wait a minute, that's a year after the Fed. It led to a 71% global GDP crisis, and stock markets had to close. Now, but the Fed was new, so it didn't have any, it couldn't do anything. And then they had this one that crashed down. And then they had this one that crashed, and this one that crashed, and this one that crashed. Isn't it great? Now, we've told you about the Great Depression in 1920. Remember? Because we showed it to you. Do we have it here on the chart? Here's 1920. Okay, here's the crash of 1920. Boom. Here's the crash of 1929. And then this one. And then this one. And then this one. See? Isn't that weird? Boom. Boom. But this is when the progressives fixed it. They fixed it back here. See all these little peaks? They fixed it so this wouldn't happen again. Enter Harding and Coolidge, the Roaring Twenties. We've told you about this. The Great Depression, 79% of everything on Earth. But I want to go back here for a second. I want to go back to the silver crisis, right? It's right here, the silver crisis. There was a silver crash in the 1890s. You probably have never heard of this, but you have heard of a story that most likely is all about the silver crash of 1890. It's called The Wizard of Oz. Believe it or not, this will kind of make you halfway popular. Halfway popular. I mean, you're never going to be popular. You'll never be the cool kid. But this one, people will actually listen to you when you tell them the real story of The Wizard of Oz. All right, this is The Wizard of Oz. This is a copy from about 1920, but this story had been out by, I think, for almost 30 years by that time. And it's a great children's story, but there is a theory out there that L. Frank Baum did not write this just as a children's story, and I'm going to give you a competing theory, and it's really laid out, and you should read all of this. It's The Wizard of Oz as a Monetary Allegory by Hugh Rockoff from Rutgers University. We'll put this up on, I don't know, put it up on the Blaze or glenbeck.com or something. This is a great, it really explains it all in depth, and I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights here. But everybody knows the story of Wizard of Oz, right? But you don't know about the big crash that happened in the 1890s. And if you compare the story and the monetary politics of the era, it's known as the populist era, it'll all suddenly jump out at you. The movie changed a few things that are not in the book. It was right here. You see it. Dorothy stood up and found she was in her stockings, for the silver shoes had fallen off her flight through the air and were lost forever in the desert. They're not ruby slippers, they're silver. And the yellow brick road is not yellow in the book, it is gold. Gold bricks. In 1893, what you have to know is that farmers and miners helped form a free silver movement. And they were applying pressure to Congress. They were all pro-silver because they wanted to drive up inflationary rates. Why? For the same reason that our Fed is doing it now, to pay off their debts. They wanted to pay their land off cheaply and get cheaper loans. And instead of working within the system, they tried to get Congress to go in and intervene. At first, they rejected them, but then Congress was bought off and Congress helped. Congress caved and provided a solution to the problem. And they mandated that the U.S. buy millions of ounces of silver. So people went out and they redeemed their silver notes for gold. But it wasn't long before the minimum limit of gold reserves was reached, and you couldn't redeem your gold notes for gold anymore. Remember, this is the time when gold coins were there. People didn't want the currency because they knew everything was being changed, so panic ensued. Well, no one knew it at the time. But The Wizard of Oz, which was written in 1900, was written based, according to some, on this silver crash and also subsequent economic crisis.